Hey everybody, Papa Wiggs here with Wiggs. Game day, first Sunday of the season. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited. Wiggs,
Looking forward to it.
yeah, it should be a fun one. So we're gonna be doing this, every Sunday where we talk about the matchups for the week. This week was kind of weird, right, Wiggs? Because we had the first Thursday night game, and then a Friday night game, so it was kind of weird. So, uh, but we're gonna jump right in, and we're gonna tackle each games, kind of give you our thoughts in regards to those games, and hopefully some beneficial information around players for fantasy for those games. So bear with us. It's our first week one stream ever, so we're excited and we hope that you guys get some benefit out of it. So I think we're going to start off with our first matchup. We're going to talk about is Carolina versus New Orleans. This one's at New Orleans. It's a division game. Should be a good one, Wigs. Excited to see this one. You got Bryce Young going against Derek Carr. Uh, you've got two defenses that they're not bad. So there's some interesting matchups. So for me on this game, I picked the Saints to win. Uh, I it's a home game for them. I think I like Carolina. I think the matchup favors the Saints a little bit better. Some key matchups for me in this game is Bryce Young versus the DBs of the Saints. I mean, you got Lattimore and as the main guy there for the Saints, so it's going to be interesting to see how Young comes out against those guys. I kind of give the Saints DBs a little bit of a edge on this one uh, in regards to the matchup. So I think that I'm also interested to see how Derek Carr does because I really do think that Derek Carr's job is, um, in jeopardy. I think that if he stumbles at all at the beginning part of this year, there's a very good chance that we see Spencer Rattler come in from the Saints. So for me, the big fantasy matchups in this game is you've got Chris Olave going against the Carolina D. I think Olave actually could have a pretty good game uh, today as long as Derek Carr can actually, hit him. Would you agree, Wiggs? I mean, Carr's accuracy with Olave, they struggled last year. They need to gain that chemistry. I think another really good matchup in this for the Saints here is Kamara. I'm interested to see how they're going to use him this year. Uh, he's coming off. He came off a decent season last year, but not a Kamara like season. So I'm really interested to see how things shake out with him. My hunch is that he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game. He's obviously going to be involved in the running game. Kendrick Miller, his normal backup, I don't think he's going to be playing today. So we'll probably see a little bit of Jamal Williams with the Saints. So it'll be good. I think Kamara uh, might be the X factor in this game. I think if they use him in the passing game like they've done in the past, um, on a regular basis that and get him out in open field, he's going to be hard to tackle. I mean, Wiggs, would you agree? Or as you can tell, Wiggs is just full of excitement today. And then on Carolina's side, I like two guys here. I like Deontay Johnson. I know a lot of people think he might struggle today because of the DBs. I think he's still going to be a big part of the game and still get a lot of targets. I also like uh, Javon. What is it?
Davian Sanders.
Jadavian Sanders. They're down 2 tight ends. I think Jadavian Sanders is going to have a huge game this game. That's just my prediction. I also think Hubbard in the backfield will be okay. I'm not suspecting him to have a huge game, but I could see him with 50, 60 yards, uh, of rushing. So in the end, I think the Saints are going to pull this one off. I think it'll be a close one, a close game. I think it's going to be something like maybe 27-24. Uh, that's my prediction on this one. Wiggs, you got any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think both these teams have a little something to prove here today. Especially you look at the Saints side, Derek Carr's got a lot to prove. They dropped a quarterback, so at any moment, if he slips up, they could easily just put Spencer Rattler in. Then on the other side of things with the Panthers, Bryce Young has a lot to prove. I know last year he didn't have like all the weapons around him, but this year he has like no reason to perform. He's got Deontay Johnson, he's got Adam Thielen, he's got Jatavian Sanders now. Running backs at the moment, I'm a little iffy on there with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders because they didn't really have the greatest of years last year. So I'm kind of interested to see how that pans out today. Um, I don't know if Deontay will really struggle at all against Lattimore. Deontay has some explosiveness, and I think he could come out and have a pretty solid game.
I think he's going to be targeted a lot, so I think that's going to be a big advantage for him.
Yeah, I think him and Sanders will probably be targeted the most. I could see them both being targeted at least 8 times in this game. I do think their running game is going to struggle quite a bit today, so I could see them passing a lot. And I think Bryce Young's actually going to look fairly good today. Um, I think it will be a close game, like you said. I'm predicting more so around like a 21-24 game. It's not too far off from what you said, but I think both these teams really just have a lot to prove in general here. It is week one, so there might be some flukiness here, but
Yeah, one thing to keep an eye on is the new kickoff rule as well. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It hasn't really done what I think they expected in the first 2 games, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So, also the new rule on the offensive line. Wiggins and I were talking about this. There was quite a few of calls on that, so it'll be interesting to see how many calls are on that in the games as well. So with that, we get into our next matchup. The Vikings against the Giants. Wow. Now again, I'm sporting my Vikings hat. As you all know, Wiggs and I are from Minnesota. We're Vikings fans, but in this particular game, I picked the Giants over the Vikings. I know a lot of people are, thinking I'm crazy for this one, but listen, I think this. I think the Vikings have a lot of question marks on their team right now, especially at the most important position in the game, and that's quarterback. I'm not sold on Sam Darnold. They can talk him up as much as they want. I want to see Sam Darnold actually produce in the regular season, and that means getting the ball to his receivers, making smart decisions, not turning it over. I just don't see that. I think that Sam Darnold is gonna cost us multiple games. I'm a little concerned that he's gonna not have the best protection on the inside with our interior line. If he takes a lot of hits, there's a good chance that he could go down with an injury, and if that happens, that's going to put us in a real tough position, especially given the fact that Nick Mullins, our backup, has already shown that he doesn't have very good decision making when he plays. Our third string guy that they just brought in, Rippon, he's brand new, so he doesn't even he's still trying to grasp the offense. So even with the Giants offense, who I know a lot of people think are going to struggle this year in regards to Danny Dimes being their quarterback, Danny Jones, because he's got a lot to prove. and I don't know that the Giants coaching staff is sold on him being their long term solution at quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see. I will say this: the Giants definitely. I think they've got a really decent young wide receiver crew. I mean, Neighbors they drafted, which was a huge pick. I think. They got Wendell Robinson and Darius Slayton. These guys, are good. I think Wendell Robinson is actually a sleeper this year. I think Neighbors is going to have a really good season. He's been looking really good in training camp. So and this is going to be, even though it's Daniel Jones, this is going to be a big test for the Vikings because our defense needs to get pressure, uh, on the opposing team's quarterback in order for our cornerbacks to have a chance to stay up with some of these younger guys. Because don't get me wrong, I like Gilmore and Murphy's okay. Harrison Smith is going to be, to me, a future Hall of Famer. We've got some guys, in our defensive backfield, that are quality players, but they're also old and they're not in their prime anymore. So we could see our defense kind of struggle if we're not getting pressure. So to me, the big matchups to watch on this one is Neighbors versus, I'm assuming it's going to be Gilmore that's on him, because I know that Flores likes to play press coverage, on most of the teams. So that's going to be a huge matchup. I you know I give I'd like to give the advantage to Gilmore, but man, Neighbors is a beast. I just think he's going to have a really good game. And I think Wendell Robinson on the other side is going to have a decent game. If there's one weakness that I'm, on the Giants offense besides Daniel Jones, it's their running game right now. I'm not a huge fan of Singletary being their starting running back. They drafted a rookie running back too. His name is slipping.
Tyrone Tracy.
Tracy, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. So if the Vikings want to have any chance of beating the Giants, they're going to have to stop the run game and force Danny Jones to throw the ball and hopefully make mistakes. On the flip side, I think the matchups to watch. Obviously, I already talked about Darnold, but you got JJ. I think the Giants defense is going to struggle with them, but I also think the Giants defensive line might have a field day with our offense. They do have a strong defensive line, and so I think Darnold's going to be under pressure quite a bit today. So I think Jefferson still will have a good game, but I think Darnold's going to be running for his life. So I think that's gonna force him to make some really bad decision, and I think the Vikings are gonna lose the turnover battle today, and that's ultimately what's gonna cost them the game. I think that this one's gonna be like 20-17, 20-14. The Giants pull it out. Wiggs.
I think this will be another close game here. I'm gonna stick with the 21-24 here. I'm giving a slight edge to the Vikings. I think that both these teams honestly are just bad right now. Aside from basically a standout wide receiver, and to me that's just gonna lead to a very interesting and weird game at the same time. I think there's actually going to be a decent amount of turnovers in this game. I think the Vikings will struggle on defense. I think the Giants will struggle on defense as well. It's just a lot of struggling on both sides is what I'm seeing. And then on the offensive side, I could totally see Neighbors and Jefferson having a field day against both defenses. I don't think Neighbors will struggle too much against Gilmore. I think he'll have the extra step, and he's young. Like you touched on Gilmore being old, so one quick move and he can go right by Gilmore for all we know, and that's all he really needs. He pops off for one long touchdown, and if Daniel Jones can actually connect on a pass, then that's a lot of fantasy points right there for Neighbors. On the other side of things there with the Vikings, you got Justin Jefferson, so even with terrible quarterback play we saw last year, Jefferson still can go and get the ball. I think Darnold's a little bit of a step up from Nick Mullins, so I get to Lacey Jefferson still going for over 100 yards and a touchdown or two here in this game. It'll be interesting to see how our tight ends do in today's game because I believe we just have Munt and Oliver playing there, or did they say anything about Harry playing at tight end?
I haven't seen anything about him being brought up. They brought up Gaskin and then Bobby McCain, I think it was, is the other guy.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. Yeah, I agree. There. The other thing I didn't hit on is Aaron Jones. I think he could be an X factor in this game, depending on how he does. They're definitely going to have to rely on our running backs to have a decent game. And again, I think it's going to be a tough game for him, depending on how they use him with that Giants defensive line. So I think if Aaron Jones has a big game, that's going to be a benefit for the Vikings. Wouldn't you agree, Wiggs?
Yeah, and I think they need to not just utilize Aaron Jones as running the ball. I think they need to put him out there for the passing downs as well. Because if he gets into open field catching the ball, he's literally like any other top running back in this league, where he can just break it off and go for a lot of yards.
Yeah, hopefully they call some screens and get him out in open field and stuff. I agree with you there. I think if they can get a decent game out of our running backs today, that's an advantage for the Vikings. I'm just not too sure how that's going to look because we really didn't get a good taste of it, in the preseason. So moving on, we got the Patriots versus the Bengals. Yeah, this is another interesting game. It's in Cincinnati. It's funny now. All of a sudden, Jamar Chase has been tagged with not only the fact that he hasn't finalized his contract, but now they're saying he's fighting an illness, and they saying he's most likely not going to play today because of that. But of course, they haven't stated what the illness is. I think it might be envy myself, but because he's obviously wanting a bigger contract than Jefferson. But with that, putting that aside, I think on the Bengals side on the offense, Burrow's looking to have a bounce back year this year with Chase out. And actually, I don't know. Higgins might be. Higgins might be out today too. I heard because he came down. I think he's dealing with a hamstring injury.
Just says doubtful for now. He hasn't been downgraded out.
Yeah. So to me, I think that's gonna leave it open for their rookie receiver that everybody's talking about is what is it, Andre?
I don't even know how to say that last
name. Iokars or something like that.
Iosivas?
Yeah, I'm gonna say AI. They're talking about him being able to step up, and this might be a breakout game for him because he's a rookie receiver. They got another guy, Trendon Irwin, that's also someone they're looking at. Me personally, I think that this is going to be Joe Burrow looking at Mike Kaczynski, his tight end. I think that their running backs, Moss and Brown, are going to have a huge role in today's game. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a lot of screens and stuff like that where they're involved in the passing game. So it'll be interesting to me. Even though they're down those two guys, I still give the advantage over to the Bengals. I got them winning this one. I think the Patriots are still trying to figure out what the heck they're doing, especially with a new head coach who's a defensive guy. I'm not convinced their offense is going to be very productive. So they got Jacoby Brissett starting at quarterback. They got some nice young receivers. They got Polk. They got Osborne. They got Douglas. They got Henry but I think Henry might be out today. Their tight end, or he's dealing with something. When he's in there, he's actually, he's playing. So he's playing today. So Henry will be involved in there. And they've got Stevenson as their running back and Gibson. I really like Stevenson, but I think they're going to struggle against this Bengals defense. I think Stevenson might struggle, which is going to really force the Patriots to have to throw the ball, which is I just don't think it's going to turn out well for them when it comes to that. So I give the advantage to the Bengals on this one. I think this is probably going to be more of a low scoring game, like 17-10. I'm not expecting any fireworks on this. That's just my prediction, and I'd be surprised if Patriots even get 10, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Wiggs?
Well, I'm going to go a little rogue. I think it's going to be a 28-24 game. I think, and hear me out, all right? Both these teams are looking a little iffy, especially now with Chase and Higgins being out here for the Bengals. I'm still going to give them the edge, but I could totally see them doing something where maybe they run plays they typically don't run a whole lot, in the sense of maybe they have both Zach Moss and Chase Brown out on the field and have Chase Brown like lining up in the slot or out on the line as a receiving running back, and then I think that could kind of open up their running game a little bit because they're not only going to have to focus on Moss there, but Chase is a pretty good receiving running back, so I could totally see them lining him up in some routes here today, especially with their depth not being, I'd say, at least the greatest. Like, they have a rookie receiver who's gonna have to prove himself here today, and then Trenton Irvin hasn't done like a crazy amount in this offense. He's had some decent games here and there, but aside from that, Jermaine Burton has lined up a few times there in the prior seasons for them, and I just think utilizing someone like Chase Brown's going to be big here. I could totally see him being out on the field quite a bit with Zach Moss today, even if it's just lining both of them up in the backfield, motioning one out to the line to run a route.
I think they're going to rely on the running game quite a bit too today. I don't think Burrow is going to have a crazy game. So you Burrow owners out there, proceed with caution, because I think that they're going to probably rely more on the running game, like you said, Wiggs. So I don't see Burrow having a crazy game. I see them probably trying to get the ball, maybe pitching out to Moss and Brown, like you said. And I agree with you with them lying Brown out on some of the sets and stuff like that. But I don't think Burrow's going to have a crazy game.
I think Burrow's still going to have around like 250 yards here in this game. Yeah, they could lean heavy on the run offense, but at the end of the day, you got to, work with what you got. And you have one of the elite quarterbacks, I'd at least say, here in the league, in Joe Burrow. He's just going to have to make something happen with his wide receivers he's got today. You're getting paid to do that. So I think it's possible he could still have a good game. I mean, the receivers could come out and shock us today. For all we know, Mike Gesicki could go for, over 100 yards today as well. I know he's done it in the past, so I wouldn't doubt it if he did it here today as well.
Yeah, and I expect that Gesicki's going to have a good game too. So
on the other side of things, I wouldn't fully doubt Jacoby Brissett here in this offense. He did decent with Cleveland when he only really had Amari Cooper as his wide receiver, and I think he had like Donovan Peoples-Jones at one point. But I could totally see him having a good connection with any of those receivers there in the Patriots offense. It is a really young receiving core. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Packers one, but not as proven yet. I think Demario Douglas could have a good game. Polk could have a decent game. Hunter Henry, I think, is going to be a really reliable option there for Brissett. And then for all we know, Baker or Osborne could have decent games. I wouldn't completely rule it out of the park that the Patriots could somehow pull this off. I think they might even be in a little bit better of a situation. Outside of quarterback, I think their quarterback is obviously worse than Joe Burrow, but I could totally see them keeping it close. I could see both teams scoring a decent amount here in this game.
No, you're giving them a lot better take than me. We'll see, though. That takes us into the next game, right? So we got the Steelers against the Falcons. This one's in Atlanta. We both picked the Falcons to win this one. The Steelers right now, just before we jumped on, it sounds more and more like it's going to be Fields starting instead of Wilson. Wilson keeps saying he wants to give it a go, but it sounds like the Steelers are most likely going to go with Fields. But any of you Russell Wilson owners out there, or George Pickens owners, or even Harris or Warren, keep an eye on the inactives when they come out, because that's what's going to actually dictate it. So, but I fully expect that Fields will be starting for him. This is going to be an interesting matchup from both sides of the ball, because both teams are going to have brand new quarterbacks. playing. Obviously, the Falcons got Cousins that'll be going for them, and then the Steelers will most likely have Fields. So it'll be interesting. I have to give the edge to the Falcons on this one. The Falcons just have way too many weapons. I think the Steelers' defense, has the potential of getting pressure on Kirk Cousins. But the one thing that Cousins is really good at is even with pressure, he's good at finding those open guys and getting the ball out and to an open guy. So I think Drake London is going to have a great game. I think that Pittman will have a good game. I think Mooney will have a good game. I think all three of those guys in their passing game will be good. Obviously, you got Bijan. I think he's going to be a big part of the offense. Obviously, I think Cousins is only going to help him. I think Cousins is actually going to help him a lot because he'll be able to read the defense and check down to some run plays. So I'm really excited to see the Falcons offense this year. I think that they're one of the teams that everybody's kind of dismissing, not thinking much is going to happen. But they did make some off-season moves. They brought in Matthew Judon on defense. So I think their defense is going to be better than people think they're going to be. So this is an interesting team, and I really think even with Pittsburgh's defense and their front line that Pittsburgh's going to struggle on the offensive side because one they were expecting Wilson to play and now they got Fields, and nothing against Fields. I just think it's it was late in the week and they probably were preparing Russell for the game plan. So I think it's gonna be a struggle for them on offense. So, for you Najee, Jaylen Warren owners, I give the advantage here to Jaylen Warren because Warren's going to be more active in the passing game, and I think I think the Steelers are going to be in a lot of third down situations where they're going to need Warren in there. So I think he's going to have a better game than Harris. I think their run game is going to struggle, which means they're going to have to pass it more. And given the fact that Fields is going to have to come in this late in the, without being able to prepare probably most of the week with the number ones, I think it's going to be he's going to struggle a little bit in this game. And then depending on what happens with Russell going forward, that could change. So George Pickens, you know what? He's hard to predict for me, but I will say this: at any given minute, Pickens can get a catch for 75 yards and a touchdown. So you can't count him out. I think the only thing I don't like about Pickens is his attitude, but I think that Pickens could very well have a good game, especially if he gets starts off right away and for some reason they hit him on a deep shot. You know what I mean, Wiggs?
Yeah, and I think between these two teams, I'm still gonna lean towards the Falcons here. I think this game's gonna be relatively close here. Today, I think, like you said, Cousins does have the better weapons and Pitts and Darnell Mooney, Drake London, Bijan. I mean, that's just a squad right there. Not trying to knock the Steelers defense at all. They've had a top defense over the last few years, but it's just too many weapons to cover, and it's just gonna lead to a struggle for them. The Steelers here with Justin Fields, I don't know if they're necessarily gonna struggle all that much there with Fields. I think they're gonna be about the same team. I think George Pickens could actually have a pretty good fantasy game here, especially if Justin Fields kind of leaves off or starts off where he left off last year with someone like DJ Moore. I don't think there's really much of a difference between those two receivers. I think it was just just a lack of quarterback play there in the Pittsburgh offense last year. And Fields, I think, is in pretty much a good position here. He's going to get the start most likely, and he's got to just prove himself right away because realistically, he could just steal the starting job from Russell Wilson this early on in the season because he's just as talented as Russell Wilson. Just really didn't have the weapons there in Chicago. And it's kind of funny looking at this game now. If Fields does start, Fields and Cousins have played each other how many times in the last few years? So it'll be kind of interesting, and there could be a nice little insight between the quarterbacks to their teams on kind of like how each other plays. Not that they don't know that already from sitting down in practice and looking at it, but certain situations could come up, and then quarterbacks could relay something to their coaches or their players on something to look out for. And I don't know. I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch this game. I think both these teams have a lot to prove here this year, especially from Pittsburgh. You're taking a lot of chances there with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Getting rid of Deontay Johnson, I think, was a chance itself because you lost a weapon there on offense. Roman Wilson is someone I'm kind of looking forward to this year. I don't know how he's going to perform, but would be nice to see their wide receiver too there look good. Pat Fryermuth, I actually think is going to have a really good year. I think he could actually be one of the top targets here in this game, if not the top target here on this Pittsburgh offense. So
I agree. I think Fryermuth might, he be another one that will have a decent game here. And I don't disagree with you with Fields Wiggs, but I just think when you're, and I get it, when you're a backup, you got to be able to come in and produce. But on the same token, I think it's different when you're coming into a game where the quarterback gets injured right away and stuff. Obviously you got to be prepared. I just think that he might struggle a little bit. The one thing I will give Fields is, he can use his feet and he can create opportunities. So that's to his advantage. And having guys like Pickens and Fryermuth who you can throw to be able to do that, and guys like Warren in the backfield. I definitely could see him create some things that were improvised. So it'll be an interesting game, but I agree. So
yeah, and I'm thinking about it too at the with Fields sitting there taking reps with the ones in the off season because they were going back and forth taking reps with the ones. So honestly, I'm not too stressed about it. I still think it's going to be a Falcons game here to lose because I think they just have more talent in their offense and it's going to be hard to stop them.
Well, that takes us into our next game, the Texans versus the Colts. We both picked the Texans here. Another division game. Wow, I think this is going to be an exciting game. You got two young, really good quarterbacks. One of them, which, is going to be out to prove himself in Richardson because he missed, almost the whole entire season last year. Stroud came out last year as the top rookie quarterback. This is, man, I can't wait, Wiggs, to see how this game. I think this is going to be a high scoring game too. I like this game. I think that I give the defensive edge to the Texans because I think that D'Amico Ryans has always produced solid defenses, and they've got some solid guys on their defensive line and their defensive backs. But even with that said, I still think that it's going to be an explosive division game. So on the offensive side for the Colts, I think that you got Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, I think he's going to have a decent game. Definitely probably around 100 yards. Taylor's, always been a touchdown machine kind of as well. So I think he's gonna do really well. I think both of their receivers have an opportunity here in Pittman and Mitchell. I think Mitchell, their rookie receiver, is going to be given an early opportunity to prove himself now that Josh Downs is out for this game. So I think that with Pittman and Mitchell, Richardson's got some solid targets on his receiving core. So, I think it's going to be fun to see them. And on the flip side, you got C.J. Stroud. He's got Collins, and he's got Diggs, and he's got Tank Dell, and he's got Schultz, and then he's got Joe Mixon out of the backfield. And then he's got, their backup running backs, and Pierce and Akers. I mean, this team is loaded on the offensive side. I think that Stroud's going to have a big game. I think the Colts defense is really suspect right now. I think Stroud's going to be over 300 yards. It wouldn't surprise me if we see both Diggs and Collins over 100 yards. You could even throw Tank Dell in there instead of Diggs if you think Dell, because I don't know how to judge Diggs this year. I could see Collins and Tank Dell having 100-yard games. I still think Diggs is going to have a role, and still produce and stuff like that. So, but those three receivers, any three of those, those three guys, it I think all three of them are going to have, a decent game. It wouldn't surprise me if all three of them have a touchdown either. I mean, I could see Stroud throwing for at least 3 touchdowns in this game. Schultz will be a good guy to get to dump the ball to if nobody's open and stuff. So I don't think Schultz is going to have a huge game here, but he could have like 50 yards. I definitely think Joe Mixon is Mr. Consistency. Between catching the ball and rushing the ball, I could see him having a combined 100 yards in this game. So I think I think we're looking at like a 35-28 type of score. I give the advantage to the Texans because I think the Colts defense is really suspect. And I think Stroud's going to take advantage of that. I think the Texans defense is a lot more solid. Richardson, I think, is still going to have a decent game because they're going to have to come out throwing the ball. So I don't think the Texans are going to be able to hold them back and stuff. But I definitely think it's going to be one of the better matchups and one of the funner games to watch today.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty fun and higher scoring game here this week. I'm going to go 35-21 in favor there of the Texans. I just think their team overall is just better than this Colts roster, both from an offensive standpoint. Like, I think they clearly have that in the offense. But I also think their defense is a lot better. I think they made a lot of improvements there in the offseason, and I can totally see them coming up clutch a few different times here in this game. And because of the Texans having more weapons on offense, I'm giving them that 2 touchdown W right there. I just think, like you said, Stroud's going to throw for a lot of yards, and at least 2 of the receivers are going to go over 100 yards. It's kind of like a Eagles or a Dolphins like type offense where 2 of these guys at any point can go for over 100 yards, and quarterback could throw for almost 4. I think Tank Dell will be pretty involved in this offense today. They obviously have plays where he gets the ball on the run, so it's going to be interesting because this offense has a lot of weapons and they have a lot of different ways to utilize them. Even if Tank Dell is not utilized a lot in the passing game, they can line him up in the backfield. He can get a toss out. He could just motion on over, grab the ball like Debo does, and run it for like 20 plus yards and a touchdown. Like, sky's the limits here in this offense. If you have one of these receivers on your team, have fun picking out who's going to have a good week because at any given point, it could be Tank Dell or Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs. Like, you just never know. It's always tough for me, at least, when I have a wide receiver in an offense like that. But
I don't know. I think Nico's definitely a must start, and I think Diggs and Dell are definitely someone that you should be looking at a flex option for sure. Um, you know, and because even if you put them in a flex, anything they do is going to help you.
yeah, it's just always tough for me to judge. I feel like I always come up on the short end of the stick there when I have a player in an offense like that. So I personally sway away from it at least. But um, you do you pick the player you want. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your decision. But moving on to the Colts side, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to have a big game here. I see him rushing for over 80 yards and receiving the ball for over 50 here. I think he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game yet again. I just don't think they really have the depth there at running back anymore. So I could totally see him going for a combined 130 plus here in this game with 1 or 2 touchdowns. I think Michael Pittman will have about 80 yards and maybe a touchdown. I think Mitchell will probably be around like 60 ish. I think Mitchell will actually break one off for like 40 yards. I think he's only going to have like 3 or 4 receptions in this game, but it'll be interesting to see how things pan on out. I'm a little intrigued to see how Richardson and Pittman do this year. I know they didn't play a whole lot last year, but in the few games they had together, I didn't see Pittman targeted a whole lot. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see what Richardson does this year, and he looks like really fit this year. So I could see him staying healthy, not getting hurt. He just needs to be smarter with the ball when he's running it and protect himself.
Yeah, and their depth at running back is Richardson. He's going to be like Lamar, I think. He's going to end up having some rushing yards for sure. So, but yeah, it'll be a fun game. So, that takes us into the Cardinals versus the Bills. This one's in Buffalo. We both picked the Bills in this one. Listen, I think the Cardinals are, just like I mentioned with the Falcons. I think they're going into the season not being talked about enough. I do think that they're the biggest, the biggest thing they're going to need to prove is on the defensive side. They struggled last year against the run. They gave up the most rushing yards by a defense. Teams were averaging around 146 yards rushing. That's why I think James Cook is going to have a really good game today. Not only rushing the ball, but he's also going to be active in the passing game as well. I think Cook could be he. I think Cook has a potential this week of being definitely a top 5 running back from a fantasy perspective. I also think that this is going to be uh, a good game for not only Kincaid at tight end. I think Kincaid, Josh Allen's going to be looking for him, but I think Coleman's also going to prove why he got drafted by the Bills and why he's one of the better rookie receivers coming out of the draft. Because I think Allen's going to be looking for him as well. I mean, yeah, they got Shakir and a few other guys there and Hollins and stuff at receiver, but I think that Josh Allen's going to be looking for Kincaid and Coleman first. So for me, like I said, I think Cook is going to have a big game. Um, I could see him rushing for over 100 yards and having another 50 yards receiving, and with a possible for him to have one touchdown, most likely receiving, maybe rushing, but you know how that goes. I think Allen could have a close to 250 to 280 yards today. Uh, he's always every game a potential to rush the ball for at least 1 or 2 touchdowns, depending on how often they get into the red zone. I think Coleman and Kincaid both could be around the 80 to 100 yards, receiving, as well. Kincaid, both of those guys have the potential of getting a touchdown as well. And then on the flip side, I'm really curious to see how the Murray Harrison era is going to play out. Harrison's got a lot of hype over the offseason. Everybody's heard about him. He's the number 1 receiver coming out of the draft. Everybody's expecting that he's going to just tear up the field this year and come out and have a monster rookie season. And he could. He very well could. I'm not as sold on that yet. I got to see it. I think that I think he's gonna, along with some of these other rookie receivers, he's gonna run into some struggles this season, especially given the fact that he doesn't really have a reliable second receiver. So a lot of these defenses are gonna double, even triple team him. And I think that for a rookie to have to face that all the time, he's gonna experience some frustration, and how he handles that frustration and adversity is gonna be a telling story throughout the season. So the Bills defense, they do have some solid, DBs. So I don't think Murray's going to go for anything crazy. I see Murray maybe throwing for 230, 250 yards, with possibly 1 or 2 touchdowns. I think that Trey McBride will have a good game because Murray's going to have to find him. I think that Harrison, a lot of people think he's going to tear up the field, but I think he's going to struggle to get 60 or 70 yards today. I could be wrong. He could pop off one big one, and then that blows my theory out the window. I think the guy that you got that I'm curious to see how it do is they got James Conner and Trey Benson in the backfield. So I think the Bills have had a history, especially last year, where they struggle with the run game. So it'll be interesting to see, how those two do against the Bills defense. I think that's going to be the key. If the Cardinals can rush the ball, they'll have a chance. If they can't rush the ball, I think they're going to struggle deeply. I think that we're looking at. To me, I can see this being a 2 touchdown win for for the Bills. Something like 28-14.
Yeah, I could totally see that as well. I was gonna say 28-21. This is gonna be a fun game to watch because I think both these teams are kind of in a spot where they draft rookie receivers and they kind of have to rely on them. I know you have Josh Allen on the side of Buffalo of the Bills there, where he can take over a game just from his legs, but he is starting to get older. Um, I'm not like always a big fan of a mobile quarterback because they tend to get hurt quite a bit, even if it's just small nagging injuries for like a week there. But I think between these two teams, the Bills will come out on top here. Like I said, I think it's going to be a 28-21 game. I think Keon Coleman and Kincaid are both going to have really solid games here. I also think that James Cook will have a pretty solid game rushing the ball with probably like, I want to say like 75 to 80 yards, and they'll probably receive it for another 30 or 40. Going to have at least one touchdown on this game as well. I think on the side of the Cardinals, we're going to be seeing Harrison actually go over 100 yards. I'm predicting 110 with one touchdown. And I'm almost certain they are going to take a shot at him right away at the start of the game. Like, they're going to design a play around him, and they're just going to allow him to go down the field, and Murray's just going to throw it down and see if he goes up and gets it. And I could totally see him right off the rip having like a 60-yard game because I think they're going to take a shot right away with him. That's what I would at least do if I was, a coach there with, the number one receiver. I'm going to take a shot and see if he can go up and get that ball right away. So I could totally see him catching it for 50 or 60 yards here right away at the start. I think James Conner is going to struggle just due to the fact that I'm not like sold on Conner this year. I don't know if he's really going to do anything out on the field here today. I think Trey Benson might actually have more of an impact receiving the ball. I think Connor's going to struggle running it, and I think they're going to have to pass a lot here in this game. McBride's going to have a good game. I'm thinking like 80 plus yards with a touchdown or two. Running back, I'm not sold on the running backs. I think Murray will probably have just as much as his running backs running the ball because he's another mobile quarterback. So
Yeah, and speaking of running backs, keep an eye on Ray Davis for Buffalo. Even though Cook is going to have a big role in the offense, it wouldn't surprise me when Ray Davis is in there that he has a decent game for the amount of reps that he gets. That takes us into the Titans versus the Bears at Chicago. Wiggs and I are on the opposite sides here. Wiggs has got the Bears winning. I got the Titans winning. This is going to be an interesting game. Uh, Another interesting game for me. I gave the advantage to the Titans just because I feel like uh, they have they have the advantage at, at quarterback right now, just from the perspective that Levis is coming in to his second year. He's played in the pro game. The Titans defense is usually pretty solid every year. I think Williams may struggle in this game a little bit, even though I do like his weapons that they've put around him. So I'm giving the advantage to the Titans this one, even though they're on the road. I think that Levy's he's not going to do anything crazy today. I think he's going to be around that 220, maybe 230 range. He's got Ridley, D Hop, Boyd coming in there. I don't know that any of those guys are going to have a huge game. I think Spears and Pollard are going to be split 50-50 from everything that we heard. I give the advantage to Spears. I think the Titans are going to try. They're going to throw the ball. They're not. It's not going to be their typical running offense, but I still think they're going to lean on the running game a little bit here. I see them mixing it up between the two. I give the advantage to Spears in regards to who's going to have a better game. I think Spears can have around 80 yards. I think Pollard might have around 60. I think they're both going to be active in the passing game. So I can see them both having, maybe around 50 yards in the passing game. I don't think the receivers in this game, Ridley, D Hop, or Boyd are going to have a huge game. I think out of the three of them, I like Ridley the best. I think that he could potentially maybe have 60 to 80 yards and a touchdown for sure. I think Spears or Pollard both could have a touchdown as well, rushing the ball. I think Levy's will throw for at least one, possibly two touchdowns. And then on the flip side, this offense is one that Wiggs, I think you would agree, is going to be interesting to see with Caleb Williams as a quarterback. I think DJ Moore is on. he's on track to have another great year. I really do. I think that he's just not given his flowers enough. I think he's going to have a really good game. Um, I wouldn't for you Keenan Allen owners. I wouldn't expect much out of him today. They're saying he's still supposed to suit up and he could potentially play, but he's coming off an injury. He's not 100%. I don't think he's going to have a great game. I think he's going to be limited in his reps. And I think that they're going to have Udunzi out there that they drafted. Again, number 9 in the draft, another one of those rookie receivers. It wouldn't surprise me if Udunzi has a nice game. I could see him having 50, 60 yards at least, on 5 or 6 catches, possibly a touchdown. I think DJ Moore could potentially go for over 100 yards in this game with a touchdown. With that said, though, I still think I give the advantage to the Titans to win this one. I think Swift will have an okay game, but the Titans are usually pretty tough on the run. So if Swift gets his yardage, I think it's going to be in the passing game. So I could see Swift having a combined total yards of 80. I don't know that he's going to hit the end zone in this game, but I think that this is going to be 2017 maybe 2014, 24-17, something like that, with the Titans coming out on top.
Yeah, I think this is going to end up being a 24-21 game. I think it's going to come down to a last-second field goal. I am going to give the edge here to the Bears personally. I just think, like you touched on, I think their weapons are pretty solid, not taking anything away from the Titans. I think both offenses are comparable here completely. I think they're pretty even as well. But I just give the slight edge there to the Bears. I think Caleb Williams, with his ability to create plays, just has a little bit a slighter edge than Will Levis in my eyes, at least right now. I think DJ Moore will have a decent game. I'm not going to go crazy with him, possibly being over 100 yards or anything like that, but I think he'll have like 60 to 80 yards, about 6 or 7 receptions, maybe a touchdown. Keenan Allen, if he suits up and plays, I think he'll be around 50 or 60 himself, if not a little bit more. Again, not sure about a touchdown there. I could totally see the touchdowns coming down to like Cole Kmet, maybe a running back in the mix, or maybe Caleb Williams just does it with his feet. On the other side of things, we do have the Tennessee Titans. I think that Will Levis is going to have a great year, actually. I think he's got a lot of solid weapons around him. He does have older wide receivers, but these are all guys that have proven themselves. I think Ridley's going to go for over 100 yards here in this game. I think D-Hop will be around the 60 to 70 yards, and then, Boyd will just do what he typically does, around the 40 to 60 with a touchdown probably. All of them are reliable in the red zone at getting the ball, so it'll be interesting to kind of see who ends up getting the ball the most there from Will Levis. I think both offenses are pretty solid. I'm excited to see this game. I think this is a good test right away. I personally like seeing comparable offenses. I will agree with you. I give the slight edge to the Titans defense at least, but I think the ability for Caleb Williams to create some plays will help them here in this game. And it should be fun to watch. And on a little side note here, not related to this game, Dak Prescott just signed a 4-year deal to Dallas. Extension, $240 million.
Yeah, the highest paid player in the NFL. I was going to touch on that when we got done with this game. So, so that leads us into the next game. Some breaking news here from Adam Schefter. Tyreek Hill was detained outside the Miami stadium coming in for supposedly reckless driving. That's a breaking story right now. His agents come out and said that it's ridiculous charges on Hill, or that he was even detained. I don't know that it's going to affect him playing or not, but definitely keep an eye on the inactives, actives on that one. That's like I said, just breaking news that came out just a few minutes ago around Tyreek Hill. So with that said, let's jump into it. To me, I don't, both Wiggs and I picked the Dolphins. Whether Hill plays or not, I don't think that's going to impact the outcome of this game. I think the Dolphins definitely have the best 1-2 punch in the league right now at receiver in Hill and Waddle. So I think that if Hill plays, which I'm suspecting he will, because I just don't I don't think that it was anything that's going to prevent him from playing. I think that Hill and Waddle both could go for over 100 yards this game. Both of them could each have at least one touchdown. I think Tua is going to have a decent game here as well. I can see him close to the 300-yard mark with at least two, possibly three TDs thrown. I like the mixture of the backfield. I don't know that anybody on the Dolphins team, Achani or Mozart, end up rushing for um, over 100 yards. But I think combined, Achani could have over 100 yards between receiving and catching, especially depending on if anything happens with Hill, which I don't think it will. But so I definitely think that one of them, Mozart or Achani, either one of them could have a rushing touchdown today. Uh, I think I give the advantage to Achani just because I think he's going to be out on the field more. And then on the flip side of things, uh, I think the Jaguars. Uh, listen, I'm really high on Brian Thomas Jr. as Wiggs knows because he's high on him as well. Not as high on Christian Kirk. I think Kirk is going to struggle this year. I don't think he's going to have a great game or a great year. Uh, I think Ingram is going to have a. I think he's going to have a decent game. You know, I think Ingram could have actually over 100 yards today. Wiggs with the touchdown. It's just the way they line him up and stuff. I think Kirk is probably going to maybe have 60 yards, if that. I think the surprise in this game is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. I do think that he could have at least 80 yards in this game and potentially a touchdown. ETN coming out of the backfield. Um, I think you know I think he could be close to 100 yards rushing. Uh, you know I don't know that he'll break 100. I think he's going to be between that 90 and 100. And he might have 30 yards receiving maybe, and with a touchdown. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to probably have around 225, 250 yards thrown with a couple TD passes. But I give the advantage to the Dolphins here, even though they're both in Florida and it's a home game for the Dolphins. I just think that in the end, the Dolphins have way more weapons that are going to produce today. And, I think it'll be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. Actually, I think it's going to be, a 3-point game. I'm saying, 27-24. So it'll be another fun game to watch, but I do give the advantage to the Dolphins.
Yeah, whether Tyreek plays or not, I don't think it really matters all that much because you got Jalen Waddle. I think even Braxton Berrios will be perfectly fine if Hill doesn't play as a wide receiver too. And then you still have, Robbie Anderson. I'm not saying Robbie Chosen, but you still have a few other weapons here in this offense. Johnu Smith, you need to rely on him. You can. I mean, you have three running backs that are capable of receiving the ball within Jalen Wright, Raheem Mostert, and Achane. So I definitely still give the edge here to the Dolphins. I'm completely on the same page with you to the fact of the Jaguars heavily relying on Brian Thomas. I think Brian Thomas is going to go for over 100 yards this game. That might be a bit of a hot take, but it's another one of those situations where I could totally see the Jaguars setting him up to have a breakoff play right away at the start of the game, and I could see him going for 40 to 60 yards. I could see that at any point in this game with Brian Thomas. He's a very explosive wide receiver here. Just a matter of if Trevor Lawrence can hit the deep ball to him, and realistically, it's a struggle there for Lawrence at times, getting his receivers the ball. From a running back standpoint, ETN's obviously going to have a solid game. I mean, he's pretty consistent for the most part in that offense. This year, I expect Tank Bigsby to have a decent role here in this offense as well. I could see him actually being utilized a little bit more in the passing game, maybe even coming in and running the ball. It might be a little bit of a hot take, but I actually genuinely think that Bigsby will be used a decent amount here this year. I don't know if it'll happen this game or not, but I wouldn't doubt it. I think Christian Kirk, like you said, is going to struggle this year. He's really only proven himself once um, here since he started playing, so I just don't see it. I think Brian Thomas is going to come out as that wide receiver one on this team. I could see Gabe Davis having a better year than Christian Kirk, to be honest. But that's just my take. I still lean on the Dolphins heavily here. Um, One thing to touch on here, another side note: Justin Fields is starting today.
Oh, okay.
NFL just announced it like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, and I just saw some more information on that Tyreek incident. They apparently handcuffed him and took him to the ground outside of the stadium. So it was pretty intense encounter, I guess. So keep your eyes open on that. It'll be interesting to see, like I said, if he ends up playing or not, or if he was hurt when they took him down. I don't know. Again, it was he was supposedly reckless driving, and he must not have pulled over or something. And that's that. You know, the details are kind of sketchy right now. They haven't come out with a lot, but that's what I'm hearing right now. It's a continuing story. So with that, let's jump into the Broncos and the Seahawks. This one's at Seattle. Wiggs and I, again, we a little bit different on this one. Wiggs is taking Seattle. I got the Broncos. Listen, I think that um, this is another interesting game to me. I think you've got a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix going up against Geno Smith. Geno had a good year last year. You know, he's got a solid set of receivers behind him. And, you know, they got Kenneth Walker on offense as well. They got Noah Fant as their tight end. So I think he's got a lot of good weapons. I like Seattle. My gut's just telling me, though, that the Broncos are going to come out and they're going to play hard. And, you know what? Bo Nix might be a surprise this year from a quarterback perspective out of the rookie quarterbacks that were drafted. You know, he does. You know, he's got some decent young receivers. Javonte Williams and Joel McLaughlin both have looked good in training camp. They're saying Williams has looked the best that he has all year, or in previous seasons. I think Cortland Sutton's a solid receiver. They got Mims, who's a rookie last year, who's supposed to be looking really well. They got Josh Reynolds. They also have Troy Franklin, who was Bo Nix's main target out in Oregon last year as well. So I think that I kind of got to give the edge here because I think the Broncos defense is a little bit more solid. I think that their cornerbacks are tough. I think Cortland Sutton is going to be guarding DJ Metcalf. So I think Metcalf isn't going to have a crazy game this game. I think he's going to struggle a little bit just because he's going to be going up against one of the best corners in the league. And I see JSN having a little bit better game. So for me on this one, I think this is another one where I think it's going to be a 3-point game. I don't know that it's going to be high scoring, though. I think maybe 20-17, 17-14. I think Geno Smith is going to have maybe around 200 yards. I think JSN could have about 80 yards receiving, possibly a touchdown. I think Metcalf is going to struggle, maybe 50 to 75 yards, possibly a touchdown because it's hard to keep him out of the end zone. Now, keep in mind, he could break one off, though, because Metcalf does have that ability, and that would throw my theory right out the window.
And he is a speed freak.
Yeah, he is a speed freak. Kenneth Walker, I think, could have a decent game, 80 to 90 yards, possibly a touchdown as well. And then on the flip side, I think Nix isn't going to do anything crazy. I think he's going to be around the 200 mark. I think he's going to have similar stats to Geno Smith. I think Javonte Williams could go for over 100 yards. I really do. I think he could have a strong game here with a touchdown. Cortland Sutton, I think, could have around 80 yards, maybe a touchdown there. Mims, I think, might be around the 40 to 50 yards here. So I don't think this is going to be a huge fantasy statistical game by any means. But I'm giving the edge um, to the Broncos on that. I also give the edge, even though I don't like the guy, Sean Payton, is going up against a rookie head coach this year. So I kind of give Payton the edge there. That's where I am, Wiggs.
I'm gonna lean towards the Seahawks here. I mainly just because I don't know what we're gonna get out of the Knicks here. I actually saw a stat line. I believe it was a day or two ago as well. It's been a very, very long time since a rookie quarterback has won their week one matchup. It's just one of those tough things where you're coming into the league. It's your first game. I honestly think they have a pretty. I don't know. I'd say one of. I don't want to say easier, but they have like a mid-pack team that they're playing. So maybe it's a good matchup here for next. But for me, just looking at the Seattle side of things, you're gonna have PS2 on DK Metcalf the entire time. I think Metcalf's still gonna go for about 80 to 110 yards somewhere in there with the touchdown. Like you said, it's hard to keep him out of the end zone. And if they get in the red zone, that is just a big body. Like all they have to do is really throw it up, and he's gonna go get the ball. And he's definitely got the height over Patrick Surtain. Nonetheless, though, like you said, I think Kenneth Walker's going to go for 80 plus yards. I've heard that they're going to actually use Walker quite a bit more because Zach Carbonet hasn't really been producing like they thought he was going to be doing. So we could see Walker on the field a good 80% of the time here. I actually think he's going to be one of the top running backs that has slept on this year. I think he's going to be like a top 6 guy here this year. Towards the end of the season, I know my rankings don't say that, but I genuinely think he's actually going to be pretty good this year, and I've gotten a lot higher on him over the past few days. So we'll see how he plays here today, and I think he's going to go for 80 yards, a touchdown or two, or receive the ball for maybe 20 or 30 yards there. I think JSN's going to have a really good game. I think JSN's going to be a breakout player this year in the Seattle offense. Geno Smith kind of didn't have like the year he did 2 years ago last year, but I think he's going to kind of bounce back here. He proved himself after, having a pretty mediocre career prior. He's got a lot of weapons here. I'm expecting quite a bit from Geno this year. JSN's going to pop off, like I said. I think Tyler Lockett's still going to have a decent role. Going to be decent. They have a pretty solid receiving core. They got one, I would say, one of the top receiving cores in the league right now. It's just a matter of putting it all together and getting the wins. On the side of the Broncos, it's just hard to judge for me. Bo Nix coming in as a rookie. You really only have Cortland Sutton, who's only had, like, I would say, a few decent years. And then you got really young talent there in Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin. You got Josh Reynolds. That might be a plus there. I think he's actually going to have a decent season. He's proven himself the last few years there in Detroit as a reliable 2 option there. I think he'll be the 2 option most likely in this offense, but I could see Troy Franklin being that 2 option. I think Marvin Mims might be like that 3rd. It'll be kind of interesting once you get past Cortland Sutton on this depth chart. Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin are going to have good years. I think they're going to split pretty well, and I think they're both going to kind of pop out. I'm going to go with a little bit of a sleeper here. I think those 2 are kind of going to be like Pollard and Spears. I think they're going to be utilized quite a bit. I think we're going to see them on the field 50-50 for the most part. And yeah, I think that's just kind of where I'm leaning there.
Sounds good. And just some other breaking news here. Jamar Chase is active for today's game. I don't know what that means, if he's going to play or not. They didn't come to a contract agreement, so I don't know what that means. But he is active now, according to Adam Schefter. So it'll be interesting to see, how he pans out and how much he plays and stuff. So I just wanted to throw that out there, Wiggs.
And to touch on the Seattle game, I think it's going to be a 2017. I liked when you pointed that out earlier. So
okay, great. Well, that takes us into the Raiders versus the Chargers. This is going to be in Los Angeles. Both Wiggs and I have the Raiders here. Listen, I think this is going to be a great division game. By no means is it going to be a blowout. But I agree with Wiggs. I think the Raiders have the advantage here. Listen, I think until we see exactly what Harbaugh does on offense, it's really hard to know, what to expect. I don't know that anybody. This is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that they're gonna be leaning towards a run heavy offense, and the problem with that for me is that you got Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins both have had injury histories. Gus is getting up there in age, I believe. And Dobbins, I think, is getting up there in age
He's
as
only
well.
25, actually.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I think they, obviously they got McConkey that they drafted. They got Palmer at receivers. I mean, I like Herbert. I think he's a great quarterback. I just don't know where it's all going to shake out. So it's going to be interesting to me to see how that. With that said, listen, that front line of the Raiders is Crosby creates chaos. And I think that he's going to be the X factor in today's game. I think that defensive line for the Raiders is going to explode, and they're going to just make Herbert stay miserable. So that's why I picked them over the Chargers. I think the Raiders are totally being underrated this year. I think they're going to have a better year than everybody thinks they're going to have. I think their defense is going to step up this year, and I think, even with the question mark around their quarterbacks, they still got a solid veteran quarterback that's going to be starting. So for me, on the Raiders side, you got Gardner Minshew. I think Minshew can go for at least 225 yards throwing. I don't think he's going to have a crazy day. I think that Javonte Adams, Jacoby Myers, I think that both of those guys, listen, the Chargers still have a decent defense, so I'm not going to sit here and say that Adams is going to have over 100 yards. I think they're both going to have maybe around 80 yards, 80 to 90 yards. I don't know that either one of them breaks 100 today. I wouldn't expect a lot from Bowers. I'm hearing that they're going to put him on a pitch count because of his injury and stuff. I think Mayers, their other tight end, is going to have a better day. I think he could have anywhere from 40 to 50 yards. As Wiggs know, I'm high on Zamar White. I do think Zamar White could have 80 to 100 yards and a touchdown. That's just my opinion. With that, Adams and Myers not having over 100 yards, I think either one of those guys or both of them could still have a receiving touchdown. So I'll say Minshew around 225 and 2 touchdown throws. And then on the flip side, I think Herbert's going to struggle. I think Herbert, is going to struggle to even hit 200 yards personally. I think he could be around that 175, depending on what we see from the offense. And I think he's going to be running for his life most of the day with Max Crosby getting back there. I think McConkey's going to show that he deserves to be out on the field, but I don't think he's going to have a crazy game in this first game. If anything, I think who's their tight end there? I think it's Everett, ain't it?
No, Everett's in the Bears.
Oh wait, it's what's his name?
Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst. I think Hurst could have 40 to 50 yards receiving. I think that they're going to run the ball a lot. But I still don't think Edwards or Dobbins are going to hit. I think both of them have the potential, because I think this is another 50-50 kind of thing where they could have 60 to 80 yards, maybe one touchdown. I give the touchdown advantage to Edwards because of the year that he had last year. So I think Edwards could have a touchdown. I'm not convinced Dobbins will, but he could. So I think this is going to be another one of those games where it's probably going to be, 20 to 21 to 14, 24 to 17, something like that. I don't think it's going to be a crazy high scoring game. So, Wiggs?
Yeah, this will be an interesting one because it is a divisional matchup right away. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know how I feel about having divisional matchups right away. Just because you kind of don't get any footing. I personally would prefer if they waited till like at least week 2 or week 3, but I think this is going to be a close game here. I actually have a feeling Justin Herbert's going to go for over 200 yards here. Not a lot over 200, like probably like 210, 215, but I think him and McConkey are going to find a connection early on, and once Herbert finds a connection with one of his receivers, I mean, he showed it the last few years. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, like he finds them and he gets them the dang ball. And even with them being in a run heavy offense, Ladd McConkey's going to be their wide receiver one. His only competition in my eyes really is Joshua Palmer there at wide receiver two. I actually think Brendan Rice is going to end up being the wide receiver three here in the season. I don't think Quentin Johnston's going to be that guy. I think he'll just be a change of pace fourth receiver there for them. On the side of their running backs there, Gus Edwards, I think, will run for a decent amount of yards. I'm thinking 50 or 60. I think J.K. Dobbins is actually going to have a good 50 to 60 yards receiving the ball. Herbert does like throwing the ball to his running backs, so I could totally see Dobbins having a lot of production in the passing game this year, and I don't think Edwards is really utilized too much in the passing game and on his prior team with the Ravens, so I could totally see Dobbins going for a good 50 or 60 and a touchdown there receiving. I'm going to say a good 80 yards there behind Ladd McConkey. I don't think he'll have a touchdown. I mean, I would love it if he did, especially with the depth I have on my fantasy football team there. I have him as one of my bench players right now, so I'm kind of hoping he pops off because I would love to see um, him start off good. But on the side there of the Raiders, I give them just a slight edge because I don't know how to predict here this Chargers offense. So I'm going to give them the Raiders the edge here just due to the fact that they do have Gardner Minshew, who actually I thought really proved himself last year filling in for Anthony Richardson. I think his weapons now are just a little bit better here from a wide receiving core. The running back core, I'm not too sure. He did have JT last year, so we'll see how that plays on out. But Devontae Adams, I think, will have a good 80 to 90 yards receiving with a touchdown or two here in this game. Jacoby Myers will probably have a good 60 to 65, I think. And like my dad said, you can totally see a touchdown there behind Myers. I love to hear that he thinks Zamir White's going to have a good game here because I do play my dad this week in fantasy football, and Zamir White is my RB2. So I really hope what he said with the 80 plus yards and a touchdown and some receiving yards does happen. I do have some ground to make up after AJ Brown's performance. So, I'll stick with that. We're going to go with 80 plus yards, a touchdown, probably 20 or 30 receiving. I'm totally okay with that. So I hope that's the case, and I hope Minshew does look at him quite a bit here because I need to make up some ground here this week. And for those reasons, I do think the Raiders are going to win the game. I do agree with you. I think they are a little underrated this year. I think you actually have them winning their division, if I'm not mistaken, this year, right? By like a game over the Chiefs.
I do, and I know a lot of people think I'm crazy for that, but I'm still not. I'm still not sold on the Chiefs. Even with that win over the Ravens, which again they're getting the Chiefs treatment with the referees, which I think is absolutely absurd. They need to be more consistent with that. So, but yeah, I did have them over the Chiefs.
But yeah, I do like the Raiders in this matchup. Again, I think a lot of it for us at least is just coming down to we don't really know what to expect from this Chargers offense. They could come out and shock us and maybe pass more than we thought today, but I'm not gonna bank on that just yet. We'll have to wait and see. It's just an unpredictable offense. I think even the Chargers offense could be underrated because I think Ladd McConkey could be really good. From what I saw in their practices and training camps, like him and Herbert already have a decent connection, and I could totally see that translating over into the games because, like I said before, Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert had that connection, and it really just takes a few games, and we could see that happening here with Ladd McConkey. And I love Justin Herbert as a quarterback, so I hope that's the case.
And just a couple of notes here, really quick for everybody. A couple players are inactive. Cam Akers is not active today for the Texans. A little surprising there. I thought for sure they would have him active, but they don't. Jalen Wright for the Dolphins is not active today either, so that's a little surprising to me. That must mean that they have a little bit more value in Wilson, coming off the bench. And then a little Vikings news here, a little surprising. Tristan Jackson is inactive for the Vikings. So that tells me, well, first of all, we kind of figured Naylor was going to be the wide receiver 3. I kind of felt like Jackson should have been the wide receiver 4 over Brandon Powell, but they must have made the decision to keep Powell because of his punt returning and something. That's the only thing I can think of there, but a little surprising there. Not anything huge, but out of those 3, I think the big surprise is Jalen Wright. I'm a little surprised that Akers isn't active because he did have a really good preseason. So that makes me wonder, what they're thinking with him, or they could be potentially shopping him around as well. So
Well, we'll take them back, right?
so so anyways,
Yeah.
that leads us into our next game, Cowboys versus the Browns. Listen, Wiggs just tapped on it. Prescott just signed it, or just got his new deal, making him the highest paid player in the NFL, which is absolutely ridiculous to me. Listen, I get it. Statistically, whatever. You can say whatever you want. All I got to say is, what is Prescott? What has he done in the offseason, or in the postseason, to warrant him to be the highest paid quarterback in the league?
What, one playoff win? I think that's
So,
it, right?
so I listen. I think that it's crazy, but hey, um, enough said with that. Here's what I think. We both picked the Browns. This is at Cleveland. Listen, that Cleveland defense is tough. Jim Schwartz is a monster coordinator on defense. They've got one of the better defensive lines in the league. They got a decent set of cornerbacks. I think Prescott's going to struggle in this game. Uh, Listen, CeeDee Lamb's back. Yes, I get it. But I still think it's going to take CeeDee a few games to get back into game shape, because he wasn't really practicing that much while he was dealing. He wasn't practicing when they were dealing with this contract stuff. It's going to take him some time to get into game shape. That's just how it works. So for me, I think Watson still has a lot to prove, but I give him the advantage. I think the Browns actually went out and they got Jerry Jeudy, which I think is going to be a really big pickup. I think Jeudy and Cooper as their two main receivers is going to be a great combination. And JUCO as their tight end. I think even with Chubb out, they got Jerome Ford and Devontae Foreman as their running backs. I think Ford is going to, even when Chubb comes back, I think Ford's going to be a surprise this year. I think he's going to win a lot of championships for teams this year in fantasy. I think that even though the Cowboys went out and got Mike Zimmer for their defensive coordinator, I like the Cowboys defense. They're tough. They're going to be tough on the run and stuff. So I think Zimmer, was a good choice at the defensive coordinator. So I think the Cowboys defense will still be good. But here's what I think. For the Browns, I think Watson could have at least 250 yards throwing the ball, because if there's one thing that the Cowboys are really suspect at on their defense, it is their defensive backfield. So I think their DBs are going to struggle against Cooper and Jeudy. I think the Browns have the advantage there. I also think Njoku is going to have a good game. He's becoming more and more consistent. I mean, I think you would agree, Wiggs, right? I don't know that Ford will necessarily rush for over 100 yards, but I think Ford's going to have a combined over 100 yards between rushing and receiving. I could see him having maybe 80 yards rushing, maybe 40, 50 yards, possibly a little bit more in the receiving game. So I think Njoku can have 60 to 80 yards. I think any three, Jeudy, Cooper, and Njoku could have touchdowns. I wouldn't surprise me if Watson throws for at least 3 touchdowns in this game. That's what I'm predicting there. I think on the flip side, I think Prescott, I think he's going to have similar stats to Watson. I really do. I don't think he's going to go crazy in this game. I think, I think he might struggle to get to 250 yards. I think that he's going to be dealing with a lot of pressure. I think the Cowboys' offensive line isn't necessarily the Cowboys' offensive line of old, so I think there's some holes there, and they're going to struggle against that Browns defense. So I think that Dak's going to be running for his life a little bit here, and so I think he's going to struggle. I think he could throw for 2 touchdowns, maybe 250 yards. Their running back situation to me is, I don't know. It's, who knows? I keep hearing that Dottle is going to be the number one guy over Elliott. They got Dalvin Cook in the mix. Who knows how that's going to shake out. Either way, I don't think none of their running backs are going to break 100 yards. I think, Elliott will be lucky if he gets 50. I think Dotto will be lucky if he gets 50. I think Dotto will be bigger in the passing game, so he might get 30 to 40 yards there. I don't know that any of these guys are going to break over 100 yards combined. Elliott may pop off for a touchdown. Given that he'll probably be the guy that they use in the red zone. I think CD's going to have maybe 80 to 90 yards. I don't think CD's going to have a huge game. I think he's going to struggle to even get to 80. I think Cooks could have maybe 40, 50 yards. I think the guy that's going to be the most productive is Ferguson in their offense today. And him and CD. I think Ferguson could have 60, 70 yards and possibly a touchdown. So I think this game isn't going to be crazy explosive. I think we're looking at a 17-14 game, 20, 21-14, something like that. Because both these defenses are pretty good, so I don't think it's going to be a crazy outcome. So that's my prediction.
Yeah, I'm going with the Browns here. I just think right now they're in a much better situation. They have a better defense. I think their offense is quite a bit better. The addition to Jerry Jeudy is nuts. I can't believe they actually got him, and I think that just strengthens their wide receiver core. One thing I will say, I think Deshaun Watson is going to go for over 300 yards today. The only reason I do say that is I have seen a tendency of players going off after a family member or someone as such passes away. Deshaun Watson just lost his father earlier this week, so I could totally see him going for over 300 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns there passing the ball. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have an unbelievable game. I'm predicting 120 yards out of him today. I think he's going to surpass Cooper quite a bit here today. Cooper's probably going to be around 80 or 90. Like I said, I think Watson's going to pop off in today's game, so I could totally see both those guys going for close to 100, if not more than 100 yards. I think Watson's going to be around 325 passing, so I think that opens up some room there for Ford and Foreman. The third string receiver will get the ball a decent one as well. Ford's going to run probably for, I'd say, 50 or 60 yards here in this game. I think a lot of his production will come in the receiving game. The dude's just a freak in the receiving game, in my opinion. And then looking at that Dallas side of things, I think CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson will be the guys getting the ball the most. Outside of that, they really don't have crazy depth at receiver, so I'm not expecting really much out of any of them. Running backs, like you said, it's kind of an interesting spot. I don't know how to predict them. I do agree with you. I think he'll probably be around like a 230 to 250 range passing the ball. If not a little less, I could totally see him going for like 220. I think he might actually struggle in this game against the Cleveland defense because they are a really hard defense to play against.
Yeah, and just a couple other notes here. A couple of other surprising inactives. We've got Javon Baker for the Patriots. He's going to be inactive. A little surprising there. The other surprising one to me is Roman Wilson for the Steelers. That's another interesting one that's going to be out. I didn't expect. They were talking he was going to hopefully be able to make it. So that's going to up the value of both Austin and Jefferson there. Again, I don't think they're going to have crazy games, but just keep that in mind. So with that said, let's jump into the next game. We got the Commanders against the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. This was a hard one for me to pick. But as much as I love Jaden Daniels, and I love Jaden Daniels, I had to give the advantage to Tampa Bay here. So I picked Tampa Bay. I know Wiggs is going with Washington, which I don't blame him. I think this is going to be I think this is going to be another good game. I really do. I think we got some really good games this week. Can't wait to see it. I think the other reason I picked Tampa Bay is I think Washington's defense is really suspect. I know they got Quinn coming in as the head coach and stuff, and he's got a history with turning around defenses and stuff. I just don't know that it's going to happen right away miraculously in week 1. So until I see what their defense looks like, especially given the fact that they traded away almost all their talent last year, which was crazy to me. Um, so I just don't know. And going up against a veteran quarterback with like Baker Mayfield, Mayfield is, you know, he's gotten really comfortable in Tampa Bay. He's comfortable in the offense. He's got some decent weapons there. Listen, you got Mike Evans, who's been Mr. Consistency, right? You got Chris Godwin, who's got a lot to prove, and a lot of people thinking that he's going to have a big year this year. You've got Otten as their tight end, who again is another person a lot of people are high on this year. You got White in the backfield along with Bucky Irving, I believe it is. Backing up White. You know what? Tampa Bay, they're not the flashiest type guys, right? But they're guys that are consistent. So until I can see what Washington's defense was, there is going to be like, I just couldn't pick them on the road against Tampa Bay, given that Baker was. I think Baker could have 250 yards. Throw in. I think he's going to throw for at least 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think Mike Evans could be around that 90 to 100 yards with a touchdown. Godwin could be around. I like Evans more than Godwin. I still think Evans, even though that he's older, he's going to be consistent and stuff. Godwin, there's still a lot of question marks for me around Godwin. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he could have like 80 yards and possibly a touchdown. Rondell White, until Washington shows me something, I think White could. I think he definitely could hit over 100 yards, and he's one of those running backs where, if he gets past that first wave, he's gone. So he could possibly break off one. So I think Rondell could have over 100 yards. I don't think he's going to go crazy over 100, and he's possibly going to have a touchdown there. And then on the flip side, I really like Jaden Daniels. I really like Terry McLaurin. I think that those guys are going to have huge chemistry this year. I think Brian Robinson is going to have a strong year as well. Eckler, I think, is going to have a specific role, but I don't think he's going to be used as much as people think he's going to be used. And I really like their tight ends in Sanat and Ertz. But with that said, Jaden Daniels, it's his first game on the road. Tampa Bay always produces a pretty decent defense every year in, year out. I think he's going to struggle a little bit in this first game until he gets his sea legs underneath him, so to speak. So I think Daniels could still have around 225 passing. I definitely think he's probably going to. We're probably going to see him putting the ball down and running a little bit here. So it wouldn't surprise me if he has. What do you think, Wiggs? Like 80 yards, maybe?
Oh, I was going to say like 50, but I'll take 80.
Yeah. So 50. I'll say 50 to 80 yards. Give somewhere in that range. I think he'll throw for 1 to 2 touchdowns. I think McLaurin has a good shot of getting about 80 yards. Tampa does have decent cornerbacks and safeties, so I think McLaurin's going to have I still think he's going to be targeted a lot, but I don't necessarily know he's going to break 100 here. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets a touchdown in this game. I think the one guy to keep an eye on here is Sanat. Sanat, I think, is going to be a safety valve. Sanat and Ertz, I should say, because they could use both of them, given that they don't really have a huge amount of depth at receiver now. So both of those guys, I don't think they're both going to have 50 yards, but I think one or the other is going to have at least 50 yards receiving. I think another guy to keep an eye on is McCaffrey. He's another one of these rookie guys coming out of this class, and given his family's name and everything and how well they produce, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets, maybe like 3 or 4 receptions, around 40 yards or something, and he kicks off his rookie year. So, so with that said, I think this game is going to be, I could see it being a little bit not crazy high scoring, but like maybe 24-20, something like that.
Yeah, I think this game's going to end up being like a 27-24 in favor of the Commanders. This is kind of just one of those games where I'm like, of any matchups this week, I could see this being like the best sleeper pick from a team. And as you can tell, I'm already a point behind of what I'm tracking here for us predicting things correctly. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance on the Commanders. Why not? I think Jaden Daniels will have a pretty solid first game. I think him and McLaurin. Don't get me wrong, Antoine Winfield Jr. is a really good cornerback. I think Terry McLaurin's going to end up breaking at least one off during this game for about 40 or 50 yards. He's just one of those talented receivers who can do that. And I think that'll benefit Daniels, obviously. I'm going to say around 50 yards rushing. I don't know if he's going to go crazy, but I could totally see him rushing a touchdown or two in, which, I definitely need this week. But um, from a passing standpoint, I think he's maybe around 200, 225, maybe. He does have some nice running backs that can receive the ball and break off, a touchdown at any given point. So maybe that could even be higher. Um, at depth at receiver, it's a little, iffy. You do have Terry McLaurin there at your wide receiver one, but from there, um, it's just kind of a bunch of guys that really haven't proven themselves in the league. Outside of, I would say Noah Brown, who I think is going to submerge as the wide receiver two in this offense. I don't know if it's going to be right away here in this first game because he is fairly new to the offense, but
I think he's fighting some. He had some kind of injury, I heard too.
well, if he is injured, then I mean he's not going to have much of an impact. I don't know. It's going to be hard for him anyways in this first game. I'm not sold on Luke McCaffrey yet. From everything that I've read and listened to, he's not separated himself from the other guys in that offense. So I don't know. I could see anywhere from 2 to 4 receptions there. Who knows? He could shock us and have 5 or 6. He's comes from a very talented family of players, so he could totally come out and have a really good game. But it'll kind of tell once.
And he's a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think his production is probably going to be one of those where you see it later in the season rather than in the beginning.
But he totally has the opportunity now with them not having Dotson. So any guy on this offense could submerge as that wide receiver too and put up decent numbers this year. So keep an eye on him for sure. I don't know how I feel.
Oh, don't forget about Curtis Samuel too.
Samuel's on the Bills now.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that.
But yeah, it'll be very interesting. I think from a running back standpoint, slight edge to Robinson. I think Eckler fell off last year, which is a disappointment. Is what it is. On the side of the Buccaneers, I think Rachaad White will have a decent game. He's a pretty solid running back. He just needs to up his average yards per carry. And then Mike Evans, Mr. Consistent, he's probably going to go for 100 yards. I mean, I'm comfortable saying 100 yards for Mike Evans every week, even if he doesn't hit it. He's just that type of receiver. Chris Godwin, I think, goes for like 60 or 70, probably a touchdown. At any given point, Godwin could be a top receiver. He's proven it I would say time and time again, even being hurt, especially when he had quarterbacks like Tom Brady or even Jameis Winston, who threw the ball his way quite a bit. He's proven himself. He just needs to stay healthy. That's all it really is for him. Aside from that, Baker Mayfield should have a decent game. Let's say about 250, 260. They're throwing the ball. Probably 2 or 3 touchdowns. Like I said, I think it's going to be a 27-24 game. Slight edge there to the Commanders, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't know that I hit on Robinson. I think Robinson, I don't know that he breaks 100 yards, but I think he'll get about 80 yards rushing, and he'll probably have another 30 or so receiving. So combined, he'll probably break 100, but I don't think he'll break it all in rushing. So that takes us into the next game, which is the last game this week or on Sunday before we get into the Monday night game. So that's the Rams versus Detroit. So it's at Detroit. Both Wiggs and I picked the Lions here. Listen, I think the Rams defense is not going to be the same defense that they've had. Obviously, they lost some key guys. Aaron Donald retired and stuff. He was a big part of that defense. So I think that this is another one where I really need to see what their defense is going to do. I think Jared Goff is going to go off. I think he could have over 300 yards in this game. I think St. Brown's going to have over 100 yards and a touchdown. I think Jameson Williams is going to come out and he's going to prove all of his doubters wrong. I think he could have 90 to 100 yards too as well in this game with a potential touchdown because he's got the ability again to Goff can just throw it down 50 yards and he could break one for 60, 70 yards. I think that Gibbs and Montgomery are going to have good games as well. I give Montgomery the edge on the touchdowns rushing. I think Montgomery could have, easily, 80 to 90 yards. I'd love to say he's going to have 100, but I really think that we're going to see more of Gibbs this year than we did last year. So I think that that Gibbs is going to be similar as well. I think Gibbs could have 80 to 90 yards and a touchdown as well. And then of course we can't forget about Sam Laporta in the offense, right? Laporta, I don't know that he breaks 100 yards in this game, but he could. He could have anywhere from 80 to 100 yards and a potential touchdown. I mean, they got so many weapons, and I think Goff's going to spread it around. I think Goff is going into this year. I think he's another guy that's really underrated, and I think he's going to pop off here. On the flip side of things, I think Stafford's going to come. He's coming back to Detroit. Obviously, he's going to be. I think it's been a couple of years now, so I think we can set aside the whole Detroit talk and him being there and blah blah blah. But I think Stafford. I don't know that he's going to break 300. I think he's going to have maybe 250, 280. I think that Puka could have. I think Puka could break 100 yards in this game. I'm not as high as Cooper Kupp on this. I think Kupp is. I don't think Kupp's going to. I think Kupp is going to have 50 to 60 yards because I really do think that Demarius Robinson, I think it is going to have a decent game here, and it wouldn't surprise me if Robinson has, takes away production from Kupp, and he has about 4 or 5 receptions for it's DeMarcus for 60 yards. I've heard that he's kind of I think he's going to be taking over that wide receiver 3 from Atwell, and so I think he's gonna be a factor on the offense. And then my guy Kyren Williams, I think. Listen, everybody's making such a big deal about him returning kicks. You know what? I think it's just one more opportunity for him to get a touch. It's not uncommon for these guys to do that. Tyreek Hill used to do it. So listen, I'm not worried about it. Do I think Quorum's going to come in and have some reps? Yeah, but I think Williams has the potential to break 100 yards in this game, and he's going to have at least one touchdown. He could have another 30 yards receiving. I think Blake Corum coming in and relieving him has an opportunity to show what he can do. He could have maybe 30, 40 yards, possibly 50. But I'm leaning towards less 30 because I really think that people are making too big of a deal of what's going on there in LA. So in the end, I think this is going to be a higher scoring game. I think we could be looking at like a 35-24 type game. Wiggs.
Yeah, I definitely think this will be higher scoring here. No question about that. I think it's going to end up being like I want to say like a 38-31 type game. I think it's going to be up there in scoring because I think both these teams have quite a few weapons that they can utilize here in their offenses. I don't know if I really have faith in either of these defenses stopping each other here in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of yards, a lot of scoring. I think St. Brown's going to go off. Laporta's going to have a good game. Both of the Detroit running backs to go off. I mean, it's endless there in Detroit. There's so many weapons. And then you look over at the Rams side of things, and I think, Puka's going to have over 100 yards. I think Kupp will be around 60 or 70. Kyren's going to have a good game. I hate to say that, but he is. The dude's a beast, a freak of nature. And yeah, I just think they're overall going to have a decent and solid game here. I think it's going to be one of those bangers at the end of the week. I think these last 2 games are going to be a lot of fun to watch here. And yeah, I don't have much more to say about this LA versus Lions game. I think it's just going to be high scoring. And I agree with you. I think Puka's going to be the guy in the offense. I don't know why people are hyping up Kupp as much. He really hasn't been all that consistent at all. If you look at his stat line over the years, he's only really had a few solid years. So.
All right, well, that takes us into the Monday night game, the Jets versus the 49ers at San Francisco. This is really going to be an interesting game. Aaron Rodgers is coming back. Hopefully he doesn't pop another Achilles.
He should get past, one play this year.
Yeah, so hopefully he'll get past one play. And then you got Brock Purdy, who obviously Mr. Irrelevant when he was drafted, and he's come out and showing that he can play the game of football. I think this is going to be a great game. Wiggs has got the Jets. I picked the 49ers. I gave the 49ers the edge because I think that ultimately they have a lot more weapons than the Jets do, and I think that's going to be the overlying factor in this game. Plus, they're at home, which gives them, to me, a little bit more advantage. I'm not taking anything away from Rodgers and team, but I just think it is. I think that in this game, for your Ayuk owners, keep in mind he's going to be on a pitch count. I just read that today. I don't think he's going to be. He's not going to be as involved in the offense, but from my understanding, he's still going to play. That Jets defense is really tough. Their corners are really tough. So Ayuk, even if he was playing a full rep and stuff, I think he still was going to struggle. I think in this game, this is my prediction, and I think CMC is playing, right? I'm pretty sure he is.
I think he is.
So yeah, it looks like he's going to be playing Monday, and he's potentially going to be able to have a full workload. So I give the advantage to San Francisco here. I think Brock Purdy's going to throw for. I don't think he's going to throw for a crazy amount, maybe 220, 225 in this game. I think that CMC is going to have a good game coming out of the backfield. It's going to be a typical McCaffrey game. I think he's going to split, yardage between rushing and receiving. He's definitely going to. I think he's going to combine have over 120 yards. That's just my prediction because I think he's going to be more involved. I also think that George Kittle has the potential of having a big game here because I think that Debo's going to, with Ayuk being on a pitch count, obviously Debo's going to be given a lot more attention. So I think that Kittle could potentially have 80 yards receiving here on 5-6 catches and a touchdown. Debo, I think, combined between rushing and receiving around 80 yards, somewhere around there with potentially a touchdown. I think the one guy to keep an eye on here in this game, who I'm calling right now as a sleeper, is Juan Jennings. I think that with Ayuk on a pitch count, it wouldn't surprise me if Juan Jennings comes in and has 4 or 5 catches for 50 yards, potentially a touchdown. I also like Jordan Mason, depending on how much McCaffrey ends up playing. It's hard to tell, because, the reports that we're getting is that McCaffrey says he's going to play, his full workload, but, the 49ers coaching staff might have a different opinion of that. I've heard really good things about Mason. He's the number 2 guy now that Mitchell's out for the year. Or not the year. He's out on IR, I think. So keep an eye on Mason. He's potentially another sleeper guy, depending on how much McCaffrey's in there and stuff. On the flip side, I think Rodgers. San Francisco's defense is really good. I think Rodgers is gonna have a tough game. I think he's going to have similar stats to Purdy. I think he'll be around that 225 mark, somewhere around there. I'm just really worried about the other weapons outside of Bryce Hall. Breece Hall, and outside of Breece Hall, around the other weapons around Garrett Wilson. I don't know that. Do they really have a solid number 2?
Yeah, Mike Williams.
So, Mike Williams, yeah, they got Mike Williams. I still don't know. Is he going to be solid? He's coming off of injuries again. So there's a lot of question marks about the other weapons around Garrett Wilson. So, with that said, I think that they got Lazard and a few other guys. I think the guy that's going to have, I think Garrett Wilson will have a decent game. I think he'll be pushing, the 90-yard mark, possibly hit 100 yards. I think he definitely gonna have a touchdown. I think the other guy to watch in this game is Tyler Conklin. I think Conklin. I think Wiggs kind of spoke on it on one of our last videos. I think Conklin is another guy that could have 6 to 8 receptions. It wouldn't surprise me if he has at least 80 yards. and a touchdown. I think Brees Hall is gonna, you know, I think Brees Hall will be active in both the passing and rushing. I think he's going to struggle to hit 100 yards rushing, but combined, I think he'll get over 100 between rushing and receiving because of that San Francisco defense. But listen, Brees Hall again, he could break off at any given minute, right, Wiggs? I mean, any given minute he could pop off for an 80-yard touchdown. So I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets over 100, if he does something like that, if he pops off for a 40, 50-yard run. You know, these defenses are vulnerable, even if they are the best defenses. So, so that's kind of what I see there. I think this is going to be, I don't think it's going to be high scoring, but I still think there's going to be points scored here. I think 24-21, and I got San Francisco.
I like how close we are here on a lot of our prediction. I was going to say 28-24. I just genuinely think both these teams are going to find some success against the top defenses. I think there's just too much talent on the offensive side of things for them not to have some sort of success. I'm not taking anything away from the 49ers. I just think the Jets have a slight edge here right now. That's just my opinion here on this game. I think Rodgers and Brees Hall are going to have a really good connection here. I think both Hall and McCaffrey are going to be nuts in this game. I think Garrett Wilson's going to have over 100 yards here. I think Conklin's going to have a really good game. On the other side, I think Brock Purdy's going to have a pretty solid game throwing the ball to Samuel and George Kittle. I do agree with you. I think Juwan Jennings will have a decent game, especially with Ayuk only being out there for a certain amount of snaps. One thing I will note, I hope the Jets are somewhat smart here, and with them not having crazy depth at wide receiver, I hope they bring in Braylon Allen a little bit, line him up, even if it's just as a receiver. He doesn't even need to be a running back out in the game. Just line him up at the slot or something and let him run a route. The dude's a freak of nature, just like Brees Hall. I think they need to find a way of utilizing Allen if they're going to use Hall quite a bit. And whether that be running two running backs in the backfield and motioning one of them out to receiver, like do something with both of them. Like I think both these guys could be utilized quite a bit here. I wouldn't hate it, and if I was a coach here, I'd be utilizing my talent in Braylon Allen and just letting him line up as a receiver, like a fourth wide receiver in the game, or even just straight up as a slot. Like utilize your talent, and see what he does, because I think he's another one of those running backs. And I know you were talking him up quite a bit after the preseason games that he played, but he's one of those guys that is just like Brees Hall, where he's a freak of nature and could just break off a play at any given moment. So I would love to see the Jets utilizing him in some setups here with Brees Hall on the field, because that's a lot of talent there between those two running backs.
Well, and the Jets offensive coordinator, was in Green Bay when, Rodgers was there, and they had Jones and Dillon and stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do that. I'm glad you brought that up. I do think Braylon Allen is definitely a good guy to have behind Brees Hall, and so I'm excited to see what he can do too. So it's going to be a good game, definitely. So I think it's going to be a good week one all the way around.
There's a lot of good games.
A lot of good games. Keep an eye on a lot of the stuff that we talked about, and a lot of these players. You just never know who's going to come out. And as someone that we weren't expecting to have a big game and stuff, so we'll see how it goes. So, Wiggs, do you got anything else to add? I think we hit everything. So with that said, obviously we're live here. We want to give you guys enough time to go and take a look at your lineups. You got 35 minutes before kickoff here, so keep an eye out on all of our content coming out on Fantasy Fools PPR here on YouTube. We're also out on Snapchat, X, Instagram, and TikTok. Like, subscribe, share. We appreciate all your feedback. If you got any questions, need any advice, don't ever hesitate to reach out. And if you like this content, keep it going, keep sharing and stuff. We want to build this up. We want to give you guys all another option, another set of opinions, right, Wiggs? Did you want to add anything?
Nope.
All right, with that, well, good luck